Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I start by echoing the comments about Lord James Douglas Hamilton and his sad passing and send condolences to his family. I never had the privilege of meeting him, but I think you can tell from all the comments from right across the political spectrum in how much high regard he was held. Deputy Presiding Officer, for weeks now, the Health Secretary has been trying to save his job while the crisis in the NHS continues. And things are getting worse. In 1 week, over 1,000 patients waited over 12 hours to be seen at A&E. Tens of thousands are waiting for crucial diagnostic tests, including cancer. And waiting lists are now the longest they have ever been. 828,398 Scots are now on an NHS waiting list. And over 80,000 of them have been waiting for over a year. But tragically, for many, they will never receive treatment. So can the Deputy First Minister tell us how many people died last year while on an NHS waiting list?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, can I first of all say the Government and I take these matters very seriously indeed. These are challenging figures, and we know, of course, that behind the figures are people who are waiting too long for treatment. Long waits are regrettable. We have seen a significant reduction in the longest waits since those targets were announced, and we've also seen some improvements in diagnostic waiting times. The latest figures also show that NHS activity has increased. In terms of the actions that we are taking, we are committed to further reductions through our £1 billion investment in the NHS recovery plan to increase capacity to help the NHS recover from COVID, and of course in each of the next 3 years we'll provide NHS boards with £100 million to help to reduce inpatient and day case waiting lists by an estimated 100,000 patients and deliver year-on-year reductions. Of course, none of this is made easier by the complete lack of funding from the UK Tory government in next year's NHS requirements.
Ms Sarwar.
Deputy Officer, I mean, the government's head is absolutely in the sand. 828,398 of our fellow Scots are on an NHS waiting list, and that's the pathetic answer we get from the government. Now, our freedom of information request to health boards show that in the past year, 24,567 people died while on an NHS waiting list. 24,567. Many of these people waiting anxiously, often in pain, for potentially life-saving tests and operations. 2 years ago, Humza Yousaf launched an NHS recovery plan that has failed. Things have got worse, not better. But rather than having a government that is focusing on these problems, we have a First Minister and a Health Secretary going from crisis to crisis. When lives are being lost, surely we need a Health Secretary and a government focused on doing their jobs, not saving their jobs.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the Health Secretary and indeed the entire government is focused on the NHS because these are serious statistics, and they are, of course, as I said earlier, behind every statistic is a person and a family, and I deeply regret anyone who, the fact that anyone has lost their life while on an NHS waiting list. But of course, these issues and challenges are not unique to the Scottish Health Service. Every health system is under the same amount of challenge. The Welsh Health Minister said just a couple of weeks ago, the NHS in Wales, like other healthcare systems, is facing the most challenging financial pressure in recent history. This is due to the impact of continued increasing demand on services, persistently high inflation on costs, including energy, medicines and pay-related pressures, in addition to the impact of the pandemic and ongoing COVID-related costs. We are all facing these challenges. And of course, as I set out in my first answer, some of the actions that we are taking, the £1 billion NHS recovery plan, the £300 million investment over the next 3 years to bring down inpatient and day case waiting lists. I would have thought that was something Jackie Baillie would have welcomed rather than talking from a sedentary position. But none of this is made easier by the £10.8 million that we have received or will receive in consequentials for the NHS.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister.
But let me be clear.
Ms Sarwar. We need to move to Ms Sarwar. Ms Sarwar, please answer your next question.
Deputy Presiding Officer, it's not working. People are dying and waiting lists are going up. Our NHS is in crisis, patients are being failed and staff are burnt out, and we have a Health Secretary fighting to save his job. I would say to SNP backbenchers, this is your constituents on these NHS waiting lists. Perhaps show some care for them. And after 16 years of SNP government, it keeps getting worse, not better. Shona Robison was the Health Secretary who promised to end delayed discharge, but numbers are still on the rise. Humza Yousaf was the Health Secretary who promised to bring down waiting lists, but in the 2 years since his failed recovery plan, they've gone up 28%. That's 182,000 more people on NHS waiting lists. And Michael Matheson was appointed to fix the mess, but today we reveal that over 24,000 people have died on an NHS waiting list in the past year. Deputy First Minister, won't you accept that NHS patients and staff can't afford yet another winter with a failing SNP Health Secretary and a failing SNP government?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, as I said earlier on, these challenges, and they are challenges, are affecting every healthcare system in these islands. There's nothing exceptional about the Scottish Health Service or the challenges facing it, even though Labour would try to make it so. And if you look at the comments I gave from the Labour Health Minister in Wales, they are facing exactly the same problems. There's nothing exceptional about the problems facing the NHS in Scotland. And the action that we are taking, I have set out in my answer previously. We are investing, we'll continue to invest, we'll continue to make sure that funding goes to the front line and not follow Tory spending plans. What won't be helped, though, is, of course, the Labour Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting's answer that seems to be to open the door for the private sector to come into the NHS. I don't think that's the answer for Scotland's health service going forward. This government will invest in a publicly funded, publicly run health service, and we will not be privatising it.